Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Finn's Faithful Podcast, an early edition here today. And guys, take a second, please smash that like and subscribe button and continue to help support the channel. And today's episode, to help me break down the Dolphins Colts game, is Alain Poupart from Miami Dolphins on SI. Nobody covers this team more than him on a daily basis. Oh, where's the heart? Oh, I was hoping for that. I seen you with Omar. Alan, thank you so much, man, for hopping on this morning.
You got it. My pleasure.
All right.
All
right, good. All right, so let's, I guess, get started. Before we get to the Colts game, let's kind of 2-3 start. They squeaked out a win versus New England. We had the bye week, kind of chance to decompress. Is it as simple as everybody says? Tua comes back whenever he gets back, and the offense is fixed? Or is there fundamental roster problems and flaws that have led to this kind of 2-3 start that even we saw back in training camp?
Yeah, I mean, is that what everybody's saying? I know. Yeah, I know some people are saying it, but no, I don't think it's that simple. And again, you have to go back to the end of last season where things started going downhill a little bit with the offense, mostly the offense. And the defense also had its issues, but I'd say the defense, more so than the offense, was injury related. Then you start off this season against Jacksonville. It was no work of art. They wound up pulling out the win. They had the two big plays. And against Buffalo, it was butt ugly until Tua got hurt. And then it got even worse when we had Skyler and Tyler Huntley in the lineup and with a brief appearance from Tim Boyle. So that's the big question to me, is exactly what's the offense going to look like when Tua comes back, as is expected to be the case right now, and how close can it get to the level it was at last year before the slide started?
Right, and we had a little preview of the first two games of the season. The Jacksonville game, we were a Javon Holland forced fumble away to losing to. If you look at the Jacksonville Jaguars now, that would have been a horrible loss. They're pretty awful. They're dismantling that team. They've already started, and then the first half versus Buffalo before Tua had the head injury. But I guess for me I think people kind of estimate the fact of how much this offense was tailor-made for their starting quarterback, right? Yep. And I guess this is more of a Chris Greer issue, which, Alan, I could have 100 podcasts on how I feel about Chris Greer. We won't get into that now. But
sure, go ahead. Let it
rip. You don't bring in a quarterback with obviously not as good as him, but even a similar skill set. I don't think people realize the drop-off from even a Mason Rudolph to a Tyler Huntley and a Skylar Thompson. I mean, did that baffle you, that decision? I mean, do you agree, though? In turn, I think people overstate the difference of the offense without Tua. I think it all connects and it kind of plays into one another. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, and this is where I'm going to go back to a statement that I made a couple of years ago that got me a whole bunch of flack from a whole bunch of different directions. I had to wear armor and a protective gear, and I had to pull over the hoodie like this to protect from all the shots I was taking. But when the Dolphins had a good, serviceable backup with Teddy Bridgewater, even though, no, it did not look the same as it did with Tua in that 2022 season, for everyone who tells me, well, Teddy B sucked, you could easily see to that, I will counter, well, look at his stats and project those stats at 17 games. But then don't tell me that we had enough of a sample size to say that Teddy B sucked, but we can't use the sample size because it's too small to look at his stats, what they would have looked like over 17 games. And Teddy B had basically, 3 plays against Buffalo in that week 2 season. And I don't want to spend a ton of time on Teddy B, but the point is that the Dolphins in that season had a good, solid, almost starter caliber backup who unfortunately couldn't stay healthy himself, which is why the Dolphins after the 2022 season could not bring him back, because you can't have a fragile backup behind a fragile starter. But then you see the difference between Teddy B and having Skylar Thompson. And I gave the Dolphins the benefit of the doubt, silly me or maybe generous me, that they had seen this guy. They had this guy on their team for 3 years. that if they kept him as their number 2 guy this year, there was a reason that they had seen enough in practice to have a level of confidence that he could operate the offense. I don't want to say not to the same level as Tua. There's a reason Tua's a starter and the others are not, but to where they wouldn't be falling off a cliff the way it did. And then Tyler Huntley is a very good backup, mostly if he runs an offense like Baltimore's, where it's a lot of scrambling from the quarterback. This is not what the Dolphins do. So, yeah, it's very weird the way the Dolphins handled or mishandled the backup quarterback situation in the offseason.
Yeah. Why do you think it's been so long this team's been allergic to quarterback competition or messing with the quarterback room to bring in, like, even draft one high? I know, I guess I know the answer, right? It's to his psyche would be my guess. But, I mean, he's proven he's good enough in the NFL. And if we got to worry about that, then he's not the guy anyways, right?
But, see, yeah, and it's not even so much – bringing competition for Tua. You bring in a guy who's a really, really good backup in case something happens to Tua. I mean, the Dolphins made it clear very publicly after last season, Tua was our guy moving forward. So anybody who you would have signed, i.e. Joe Flacco, for example, or Jimmy G, for example, would have known coming in, you're not coming in as a challenger to Tua. Tua's the guy, but we want to have somebody solid because Joe Flacco wasn't signing with the Colts. He knew Anthony Richardson's their guy. He was picked 4th overall last year. And Jimmy G signed with the Rams. They had Matthew Stafford. He knows he was not coming in as a starter. So I don't understand this. I think either they either massively overvaluated what they had in Skylar Thompson, or to me, because this idea that they wouldn't want to have anybody remotely competent or closer to in skill set or ability because they want to avoid any sort of commotion or whatever, that would be lame.
Yeah, and especially like I mentioned, when you built it specifically, I don't think any other team has an offense that is so specific to the skill set of their starting quarterback. But like I said, this is more of a Chris Grier issue. And speaking of Grier, real quick, if this thing goes south, let's say they win 6-7 games, is there a possibility that he's the fall guy? Finally, I mean, I'll believe it when I see it. He survived a lot of regimes.
Sure, but to me, it's always depended on whether they can go back and look and say, look, if we hadn't had all these injuries, it's just bad luck that keeps, haunting this franchise. So why should Chris Grier have to pay the price? The bottom line is, starting in 2019, when they did this massive rebuild tank, whatever you want to call it, they loaded up on draft capital. On top of that, they took advantage of teams looking to dump big name players, which is how they were able to get Tyreek Hill, Bradley Chubb, Jalen Ramsey. And they also have an owner who's not afraid to spend. They sometimes overspend on free agents. So the ability to get players is helped a lot by the circumstances. And on top of that, you have facilities that are top notch, which rank number 1 in the NFLPA survey pretty much across the board, or got straight A's. So immediately the Dolphins operate from a position of advantage of being able to get players. Well, if you have no playoff wins to show for it from that rebuild that started in 2019 and at the end of this year was going to be 2024, I don't think anybody would have be in a position to criticize Stephen Ross for being, too premature and dumping Chris Grier. But having said that, I don't know that it's a lock that he's gone if the Dolphins don't win a playoff game.
Yeah, not me either. And he also had an owner. I mean, he had everything set up for him. A blank checkbook, a bunch of draft picks. My issue with him is, look, man, tearing down or making big trades and spending draft picks and money, that's not hard. You and I can do that. Where's the big move? Where's you look at these teams, they go up and get Mahomes. They traded up to get Allen. Where's his, I guess it's drafting Tua Tagovailoa. But I've always said this, Tua was the easy choice. They almost had to take him. You know what I mean? I don't think Herbert was ever, that whole debate. We're over that. Tua's a good quarterback, but I guess that's his only big power move. But I just don't see him doing something where I say, wow, he went on a limb and it worked out.
I don't know, and I'm still going to maintain you polled the 30 GMs outside of the Chargers and the Dolphins, you're going to get an overwhelming majority who would still pick Herbert then and now. But that's a separate conversation. Yeah. I'm going to duck again because I know over well.
Yeah, you have to go in the locker room. I don't.
No. When I joke like this, it's his fans.
The fans. Yeah.
There. I mean, again, it's just my opinion. Doesn't mean I'm right. I have a right to my opinion. Big signature move. Well, here's the thing, and it's because there hasn't been that one outside. Damn nailed it. For example, drafting Zach Thomas in the 5th round would be one of those. Right. And the two moves you mentioned, Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen, is it's two teams that identified quarterbacks and made the moves to get them. Yeah. And by the way, it's no secret by now that Adam Gase, who was the head coach in 2018 when Josh Allen came out, loved Josh Allen. Okay. This was the year of the 5 quarterbacks. Adam Gase loved Josh Allen, and he loved Baker Mayfield. He didn't like any of the 3, and that's Sam Darnold, Lamar Jackson, and Josh Rosen. But no, I mean, the Tyreek Hill move, again, the guy was team MVP the past 2 years. So it's hard to bitch about it. But then you look at the other team, and they won the Super Bowl. And they won the Super Bowl. Why? Because they put together a defense that completely kicks ass. Because right now it's not even Mahomes. Mahomes is, again, I keep hearing Mahomes is the best player in the NFL, and it's hard to argue. Mainly right now because every time it's a clutch situation, he comes through. But look at his stats. He's 19th in the NFL in passer rating. I mean, and you look at that. You watch their games. Doesn't look particularly impressive, except when they need something, he always gets it. But right now, it's all about their defense. So, no, there has not been this one brilliant move. Again, part of it is because of injuries. Jalen Ramsey has been a very good player, and to get him for a 3rd and Hunter Long, that's a pretty good deal. But again, that's one of those that falls in your lap where Ramsey wants a new contract, Stephen Russ to go get him, and Ramsey's from Florida, wants to play here. So that kind of makes it easier. Bradley Chubb was really good last year before he got hurt, but you got a guy who already had an ACL in Denver, who had a hard time staying healthy, and now we're back at this. And then you get into the whole, do the Dolphins rely on injured players too much when they go make acquisitions? To which I would respond, if you're looking for players who have never gotten injured, you're not getting anybody. The question is, again, some risk work out, some don't.
Yeah. And speaking of, you mentioned Chubb, what's the timeline we're looking at here? I know, is it more November, you think?
Yeah, right now, I don't think he looks, based on, and again, we're reading between the lines of what Mike McDaniel tells us and what we can observe whenever we see Chubb out there at the facility. So every once in a while, we've seen him do stuff on the side. He doesn't look like somebody who's on the verge of coming back. McDaniel said Monday that he was not practicing this week. So, yeah, and by next week, you're talking about October 27th. So, yeah, it'll be at least November, and hopefully it's before December.
Right. Yeah, and I guess the one positive has been the defense. They've given us a kind of, they haven't been great against the run, but I think they've given the team a chance every game. How do you evaluate so far the transition from Fangio to Anthony Weaver's defense? Have you liked it?
You remember, I'm a big Fangio fan, maybe because we're two grumpy old men. But I like, and I love this candor. So I like this defense. Not to say that I loved everything he did. Anthony Weaver, again, I like that he's blitzed a little bit more. The defense has been solid. The one thing it has not done is come up with that performance that can overcome the offense looking like crap. And that's not a knock on it, but if you're going to be a special defense, let's have the defense still a game here and there. And it was there, for example, against Tennessee, and the Dolphins were in the game pretty much until Tony Pollard breaks that 41-yard run. Against Seattle, really bad first quarter for the defense. They gave up 170 yards in the first quarter alone, including that 71-yard touchdown pass to DK Metcalf. After that, they completely shut down the Seahawks until that late touchdown drive, at which time the game was already done anyway. But that's what's been missing. Doesn't help that you don't have the two guys you were counting on as your pass rusher from the outside, Evan Phillips. So the defense has been solid, not special.
I agree. I think you said it best. And as far as the other injuries on the defense, how are we looking at with I saw Ogba wasn't practicing, and that'd be a big loss, especially with Phillips out.
Yeah.
And then the safety position with Holland and Poyer, right?
Yeah, and Poyer wasn't at the one practice of the bye week, wasn't at practice Monday. Now these were not like your regular game preparation practices. So we'll see. I don't know if I'd necessarily count on him for Sunday. The truth is, I'm not sure. I don't like Marcus May better in the starting lineup anyway. As for Holland, we had some kind of contraption around one of his hands. I'm trying to remember, left hand maybe, where the top two fingers were protected, index and middle finger protected by some kind of hard covering here. So the reports that there was a broken bone involved. So I'm guessing it's one of those two fingers. Can he play with it? I would imagine they can produce some sort of, again, protective device to where it's not going to make it worse. Not going to be easy for him to catching the ball if he has to go up and do one of these.
Yeah, I guess he can play. The question is how effective will he be? And I guess the other injuries on the offense, A-Chain and gut feeling. Do you think Tua's coming back Cardinals game?
Again, all the tea leaves would suggest that he is.
Yeah, and A-Chain with the concussion.
Oh, he was at practice Monday with a red jersey, which signals he's,
I guess, the week off
through the protocol. So it's now becomes a question of how, if he comes out of the practice without any additional symptoms, and then he gets cleared. So I would expect him to play, barring a setback, obviously.
Okay. All right. Again, guys, we're with Alain Poupart from Miami Dolphins on SI. Please, guys, take a second, smash the like and subscribe button. It helps the channel a ton. All right, let's move on to the Colts Dolphins preview this Sunday. I guess the biggest thing is, if you look at the Colts defense, not very good. 31st, especially against the run, 31st in the league. I think they give up like 155 yards a game. Is it as simple as keep same game plan as last week, keep running, and more run?
Has to be, right? Considering that plays into the Colts' weakness. And part of the Colts' problem is they've had injuries on their defensive line. I know their game against Tennessee on Sunday, they were missing 3 of their projected 4 starting defensive linemen. I had Stephen Holder from ESPN on the All Dolphins podcast.
Great writer.
The Behind Enemy Line segment yesterday. He was talking about how, that's been an issue. And then Raekwon Davis, the former Dolphins who signed with the Colts in the offseason, now is being asked to play a bigger role because of all the injuries. And he needs to be a spot player and not being asked to take on so many snaps. That hasn't helped. He hasn't necessarily been impactful for them. And the fact that you have Tyler Huntley at quarterback again on Sunday, where the forte is not going to be the passing game. All logic says Dolphins should pound the rock as much as possible. And all logic says the Colts logically would be expecting that and would sell out to try to make Huntley beat them with the passing game.
Yeah, and they're susceptible to the big play. The Colts, I think, have given up a ton of 40-yard plus pass yards this season. So what do you think? Play out just a timely 1 or 2 of them, big plays downfield, because it's there. I mean, on tape, the big play's been there. It's just obviously the chemistry and be honest, Tyler Huntley is not very accurate, especially with the deep ball. So, whether it's RPO or play action, just some timely big plays, I think, right to Hill and Waddle should.
And it's number one, it's recognizing it when it's there. And then number 2 is making the connection. And there was one particularly against Tennessee where Tyree got behind L'Jarius Sneed and Huntley overshot him.
Yeah.
And
a couple times. They're still wide open on film, downfield. That's that's the obviously the Tua absence to Huntley. Jonathan Taylor, do we know if he's coming back? I think I read an article yesterday that they're optimistic, but that's something, with the high ankle sprain. Have you heard anything about Taylor?
None beyond what you said. I mean, the Colts will be back at practice today as they start their practice week, just like the Dolphins. We'll get the injury report. But I saw a couple of different stories from different outlets where he's optimistic he'll be able to play, and he obviously makes a big difference in that offense.
Yeah, and as far on the defense, obviously facing Flacco's out, Richardson's in. I know a lot of Dolphin fans are happy about that. I'm not, for one. I think Richardson's tougher to game plan against. I think we struggle against these physical type running quarterbacks. And I do worry, too, about the broken play with his arm strength downfield, especially with the injuries to safety. How are you on the whole? Would you rather face Flacco or Richardson?
Yeah, and that's the thing too. And we wrote about this morning actually on Miami Dolphins on SI, the challenges between facing the two. And I dug up this stat. Flacco has a 6-3 record as a star, even though I hate records, but for this discussion, 6-3 career record against the Dolphins as a starter, 6-0 with Baltimore, 0-3 with the Jets. So the thing with Flacco is very simple. If you give him time, he can carve up a defense because he's an accurate passer and he's got the big arm, but he's a borderline statue in the pocket. And he would concern me. Not logically, I would tell you, Flacco doesn't concern me. He would concern me this week because I have worries about the Dolphin pass rush, particularly with the Agba situation. Don't know what's going on with Agba. He wasn't at the practice last week. He wasn't at the practice Monday. There was no report of during the game against New England in the press box as far as an injury, so don't know what's going on with him. And the thing with Richardson is again, Flacco is going to be a lot more consistent with his passing. Richardson's going to be all over the place. Richardson's going to make you, within a span of 2 plays, he can make a pass that maybe 2 quarterbacks around the NFL can make, and then he'll throw a ball, and you'll be like, only Will Levis would make that same really poor decision. So, which one is which? Richardson is way more unpredictable. It could turn out that it's better for the Dolphins as Richardson if he is in error-prone mode, but I think he's also got the potential to be a lot more dangerous because of the scrambling and because of Flacco's got a big arm too. Richardson's got a bazooka.
I mean, Richardson's it's unreal. Like I think you said, unpredictable. I guess Flacco's more consistent, but I just think I like facing this quarterbacks that don't give you that dual threat. But you said with the Agba injury, that's going to be tough because I think even are you surprised we haven't seen Mo Kamara at all? And they put Bauer over him and Quinn Bell.
Yeah, and we asked about Anthony Weaver. We asked about Kamara to Anthony Weaver, the defensive coordinator, last time we spoke to him. And reading between the lines, it was a case of necessarily trust him as an edge setter, which is always going to be priority number 1 for him when it comes to playing time. I liked what I saw of him physically in training camp, but that's not the same thing as getting into a game and actually having to do it. And it's kind of disappointing that he hasn't been able to get on the field because Quentin Bell, as great a story as he was early in training camp, really hasn't done a thing since. Now, I know he contributes on special teams, and maybe that may be why he's in the lineup and Kamara isn't. But the fact is the Dolphins are not getting a ton of impact from the edge defender position. Outside of Agba, Chop Robinson, the Dolphin coaches keep talking about how, he's doing a good job and he's progressing and all that. Don't look at the stats. I'm not necessarily seeing a ton of impact regardless. So.
Yeah, I did. When I started the podcast, I did a bunch of draft episodes on Chop. And honestly, what I saw in college is what I'm seeing in the pros. My concern about him setting the edge, doesn't have a variety of pass rush moves, and everything's almost. And I think that might have to do with his arms are very short. He doesn't have long arms. It's kind of everything is all. Everybody tells me about the pressure rate. I'm hearing the same things I heard in college, and that kind of concerns me as I've seen from Chop. Is that how you kind of seen it?
Yeah, and I saw some metrics that have him like, I don't know if there's Pro Football Focus or somebody like that has him like high in terms of pressure percentage or whatever. And I'm like, why am I not seeing this? Because normally you can feel a guy, even though he's not getting sacked, you can feel a guy's like often around the quarterback. I'm not feeling that with him. And I can tell you one of the first times I saw him up close and personal, as I say, in training camp, my immediate thought was like, not terribly big. And I know somebody had thrown out a Cameron Wake comparison. Well, I guess because they both went to Penn and both didn't have big numbers at Penn State. Cam Wake was, is put together like he's a dude. And Chop Robinson is just not like that, and that kind of bothered me a little bit. And you look at him at the end of the line, and he's smallish. So
he looks it out there, and he's not very long, right?
no.
And I think that's part of the problem, like almost a tackle or almost a sack, and that's I kept hearing about the pressure rate. I don't know if you did coming out pressure rate. I'm like 15 tackles though.
Yeah.
Yeah. At the end of the day, stats do matter at some point.
Well, again, like for me, it's even beyond stat. Let me notice you during the game, and he had like the one pressure. Who was it against? Against Tennessee or New England? I think it was New England. Sorry, last Sunday or 2 Sundays
up the middle.
Where he rushed the middle.
He's better at that. I'll give him that.
But there haven't been enough of those plays.
Yeah. All right. So the one unit that the Colts are pretty good at is their offensive line. I know they lost Will Fries. I think Dalton Tucker replaced him, but they still got probably the best guard in football in Quentin Nelson and two really good tackles on the right side, Braden Smith, and then on the left side, Bernard Ryman. Is it the key here? Again, they're facing a Dolphins defensive line that, yes, the defense has been solid, but against the run, I still have my concerns. Is their biggest key to stop not only if it's Jonathan Taylor or Trey Sermon, whoever, but also the quarterback, shut down the running game? You think that's going to be the biggest key for the Dolphins defense?
That usually is, isn't it, though?
Yeah.
I was flipping through the red zone during the bye, and the Colts came on a few times. And what I noticed is that offensive line, that supposed really good offensive line, was getting spanked by the Tennessee defensive line. Now, mind you, they have two dudes in the middle of that line with Jeffrey Simmons and Tavondre Sweat. But Tennessee was winning that battle. And Flacco had a very mediocre outing. And part of the reason is a lot of times he was dropped back to pass and he had somebody in his face pretty quickly. Even if you remember the game-winning touchdown to Michael Pittman, he had to get rid of it and throw a lollipop in the air because he had somebody in his face immediately. So I did not see what you would call a dominating offensive line in that game for the Colts. Now, having said that, I think Tennessee's defensive line is better than the Dolphins' defensive line, and that could be an issue. So that would be a concern.
Both guys and both guys could have been Dolphins. If you remember the Christian Wilkins draft, I always say this: sometimes it's not the player you take, it's the player you don't take. It seems like the Dolphins always target a position, and the guy that's picked right after usually ends up better. But Simmons was picked, I think, 5 picks later to the Titans. But that's for another
but if you remember,
he had issues, right?
Injury in last year at Mississippi State. So
yeah. And I wanted Sweat this year, but that's a
no. You know what? Somebody else in the media contingent, whose name shall remain unspoken at this time, also wanted or said he wanted Sweat. Would you've been okay with taking Sweat at 21 after he had a DUI issue? Right?
No, I guess I thought if he fell to 55 because I didn't think I didn't think he was going to go as high as Tennessee took him. But I always said physicality on the line of scrimmage, and another thing they didn't do anything to address. They got less physical on the line of scrimmage with the loss of Hunt and Wilkins. So, but again, that's a Chris Greer issue.
Well, all right. Them going on the cheap. I mean, Calais Campbell's been a great addition.
Oh, he has.
He can't play a ton of snaps, but going with the quantity over quality to replace Wilkins,
Yeah, I mean,
I don't know about that one.
Yeah, I don't either. So what is your gut? Do you have a prediction of this game, or not? Maybe it's too early. You don't want to spoil you, but where are you leaning? Kind of give me. I know. You guys got to check them out on Miami Dolphins on SI. But can you give a preview of where you might be tilting?
Yeah, Saturday morning I do my my complete game preview on Miami Dolphins on SI.com, including a final score prediction, including why the Dolphins will win, why the Dolphins will lose, and the final score prediction. Right now, you know what? I'll be honest with you. At this particular moment, I'm like flipping a coin, going like this.
Same.
I could see this going either way. I know the Colts are favored, I think, by 4. It's very easy for me to envision the Dolphins losing. It's very easy for me to envision the Dolphins winning. At this moment, as presently constructed, I don't think we're not dealing with 2 elite teams at all. And, so it's kind of tough. Normally you get a better feel.
Yeah, I don't have a great flip of the coin.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Before I let you go, I don't want to take too much of your time. I know you're a busy guy. Look, there's been some activity in the division recently with the wide receiver trades. Amari Cooper going to the Bills and Devontae Adams going to the Jets. How much do you think that kind of does it shift anything in the division, or kind of the same for you?
It's still Buffalo as a team to beat, and the reason is Josh Allen, because he's the best quarterback in the division, if not the NFL right now. And I say that with all due respect to Patrick Mahomes, and Patrick Mahomes will always get the nod from everybody. And again, just because he's done it time and time again in the clutch, but Josh Allen is just playing. I think it's more adding Amari Cooper is big for them in terms of forget the AFC East, but beyond, because now they have a go-to guy in the passing game that they didn't have before, with all due respect to Khalil Shakir or Keon Coleman or former Dolphin Mac Hollins. But that's a different dude. And for the Jets, having Devontae Adams, that's big. That's big. And this is a team that was close. I mean, that was a weird game Monday night because the officiating was a joke, number one. There were bad calls all over the place. The Jets easily could have won if Greg Zuerlein could make a field goal, although it was very windy. But then again, they also got a fluky touchdown on the Hail Mary at the end of the first half. Then they have the miscommunication with Mike Williams, which Aaron Rodgers pointed out in his press conference after the game.
Are you surprised? Are you surprised?
Here's the thing, though. Here's the thing. We in the media will always, or very often, criticize players for being, what's the word I'm looking for having too much of a filter, not revealing anything. So then can we really dump on Aaron Rodgers for pointing out what happened on the play? Even though technically it's not necessarily the proper thing to do, to like throw your teammate under the bus for having messed up. So I'm kind of like, I'm a little torn on this one to me. So because the last thing we want to do is like criticize somebody for being too open. All of a sudden, everything is going to be, we give it 110%. No, it was a miscommunication on both our part, and you'll get no answers, no transparency whatsoever. So keep saying it like it is, Aaron.
It gives everybody something to talk and write about, right?
Yeah, so I would say, though, that it obviously made both teams better since they didn't lose any players because of it. And it's just made the Dolphins' task tougher as far as making hay in the AFC East, and then with the Jets, if they become a wild card competitor as well.
Yeah. Do you expect, I guess one that on this, do you see the Dolphins, I guess a lot will be told by these next few games, but do you see them kind of getting in something in the trade, being active in the trade market?
I don't know. They can't. Here's the thing: is they can't take on a guy that, like the Cooper trade was so good for Buffalo, because, and then even with the Jets also, because the Jets wound up, apparently they restructured Adams's deal to tack on void years to basically to move money around, where then after this year they're going to renegotiate or re-sign him. And then Cooper's got like a very team-friendly deal because the Browns turned his salary into a signing bonus this year to lower his cap number. So that works out great. The Dolphins would need to have something like that because they're already going into next offseason with a precarious cap situation. And then what position are we looking at? Generally speaking, wide receivers are the guys who get traded. And the Dolphins really going to take on Mike Williams, for example? Are the Dolphins going to take on Hassan Reddick and deal with that contract headache when he couldn't come to a new deal with the Jets because he wants big money? So I don't know. Let's say less than 50-50.
Yeah, I agree. All right, well, I guess we'll wrap it up there, Alan. Thank you so much, man. I hope let's do this again sometime. I had a great time. And before we go, let everybody know where they can find your work and what you got going on Miami Dolphins on this side.
Well, as you just aptly pointed, the website is MiamiDolphinsOnThatSide.com, and check out the podcast every day. All Dolphins podcast. The latest episode involved, as I mentioned earlier, Stephen Holder from ESPN covers the Colts for Behind Enemy Lines. We'll be back at it again today, and we'll have 5, 6, 7, 8 stories. Whatever the news dictates in terms of keeping everybody up on the latest developments with the Dolphins.
Yeah, everybody go check them out. I always say when you need all your Dolphin info, whether it's your podcast or I don't know how you pump these articles out, man, but Keep doing the great work, Alan. Thank you so much, man, for hopping on.
Appreciate it.
All right. As always, guys, stay Fins faithful. We're out.